PodcastCoug Season 1, Episode 1.
You're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everyone. This is the PodcastCoug. I'm James Laurie. I'm so glad you've joined us. This is the Season 1, Episode 1, the very first episode of the PodcastCoug, where we are all things Cougar football, all things Cougs on a weekly basis. We're coming to you on a podcast, so you can join us at any time with audio on demand, program on demand. And the idea is, this has been in the works for about a month now. It takes a while to get a podcast together, and this is your Sunday through Saturday. What I mean by that is, by the way, I'm so glad you're joining us. If you're a friend, or you know me from Wazoo Watch, the old Coug Zone message board, I'm MI Coug, for 15 years on the board as a moderator for 13. So glad you joined us. This is kind of the idea with the PodcastCoug, which is audio on demand, right? Radio on demand. It's designed for, if you are a Coug fan, hardcore Coug fan for football, and you have, you're reading the local press, the opposing team, their city's press. You are on the boards, right? Message boards, and of course you're listening to the press conference or reading the press conference, listening to local sports radio, and you just need more to get you through a Sunday through a Saturday through next game. There's only about 4 podcasts out there that are right now for Cougar football, and so I had this idea that would be a great idea to add another. There's more room for this, and just kind of my background, of course, is in radio, and I've got a dedicated room at home, so it is kind of a perfect fit to bring you a audio on demand Cougar football for PodcastCoug. So also remember now, if you like what you're hearing, we're all over iTunes, Stitcher, which is a dedicated podcast app, or the iOS, your Google Play, your Android, or podcastcoug.com. You can pick us up in all areas, all formats, right? This is a weekly podcast. It's about 30 minutes. It's going to come to you every single week, generally on a Wednesday or Thursday. And, all through football season, after the bowl game, and then we're done, right? Okay, here we are, week 9. The Cougs are 6-2, 5-0 in conference. And, here we are, another game where we don't respect our opponent. We really don't show up. I mean, we physically show up, but we don't show up. Right? And here we are. Oregon State last Saturday took my daughter to the game in Corvallis, ran into Bill Moose prior to the game, about an hour before Reeser, right outside Reeser, and right in front of the team buses. Bill Moose comes out, and we had a great visit with Bill. He gave my daughter some encouraging words to keep doing great in school, keep working hard, study hard, and would love to have you at Washington State someday. So that's her choice, but it was great to get a photo op with Bill. Here we are, Oregon State, and who beat California, but that's about it, really. They're on a rebuild with Anderson, with Coach Anderson, who's a great coach, came from Wisconsin, had a couple of great years with Wisconsin. And lo and behold, he's at Oregon State for reasons that he claims the Wisconsin had huge academic standards, and he just did not want to deal with that level of pressure for the kids. So he went to Corvallis. He's in a rebuild mode, but here it is, halftime. Really, it's 24-6, but at one time it was 21-0 Oregon State. And again, who would have thought this has happened over and over and over again? We have not boat raced one team this year except for Idaho. So the UCLAs, the Stanfords, and the Oregons were all pretty much we were right in there. I think Oregon, we ended up, putting that away pretty good, but Stanford, UCLA, and we're very close, and we just can't seem to put teams away early, and we're not respecting our opponents. If you take last season, opening game, and this season with Eastern, and last year with Portland State, we are not prepared. Now, if this is Luke's way of, if he likes this, because he does a great job under pressure, but if maybe it's Mike Leach's responsibility or his job, really. I mean, it really is. But he's not necessarily getting that done. Now, he's doing everything else right? I mean, he really is. From a comeback from 24-0, ending with a 35-31 victory over Oregon State on Saturday, which is puts us at 5-0 in conference play, 6-2 overall, in a good position coming into Martin Stadium for for Arizona. The Wildcats are coming on a 1 p.m. kick that Gabe Marks loves. The 1 p.m. kick times in afternoons. We've been calling this the primetime Cougs. We've been on primetime almost every Saturday. Most of it's ESPN. Prime time, 7:30, 7:45. The primetime Cougs, disadvantage with that is East Coast. It's 10:30 at night when the East Coast puts on their pajamas and goes to bed. So some of those sports writers don't know until they wake up in the morning what the outcome of the game is. We're not getting 40% of the United States that way. That is, literally so late at night. 1 o'clock helps so many ways. Dad's weekend for Arizona. And I don't know who the talent is this year for Arizona in Pullman. Who is Dad's weekend? What's the entertainment? What's the headliner? I don't know. I should know, but dads are going to be camping out in the kids, their son's dorm or apartment, maybe on the couch on the floor, or the kid gets the couch and the dad gets the bed. But the bottom line is, when he has to drive, whether it's from Spokane, Tri-Cities, or from the West Side, 1 o'clock is so much easier than an evening game when you're back home at 4 a.m. is just brutal. It's very difficult, and it's almost not possible to do an over and back. It's certainly when you're living on the West Side. So that 1 o'clock is certainly easier on the dads for Dad's weekend. Following weekend, California. We're taking one at a time, but the following is California. Two home games in a row. Berkeley comes to town in Pullman, and that game is on ESPN at 7:30. Another night primetime Coug game. That would be November 12th. Right now, November 5th with Arizona. And here we go. Now, anything else with Oregon that we want to talk about? Well, let me see. I mentioned they're in rebuild, 21-0. Gosh, wow. But Luke pulled it off. Gabe Marks had a great game. So did Craycraft, River Craycraft, and Gabe Marks. How about those catches? Gabe is just amazing, and it's his senior year, going out with a huge. You couldn't ask for better. He seems to be very strong and healthy. Luke, we constantly are seeing this, and he's getting beat up. UCLA just knocked him down so hard. So did Stanford, Oregon, and here Oregon State, and he's really taking a beating. And that's Mike Leach's quarterbacks always do. There's the big question of the day, whether Luke will return as a senior next year and finish at Washington State. That is a big question. And that's been, all over the media this week. There's NFL scouts that are trying to talk to him. I don't know if he's hired an agent covertly, or I know agents are trying to get in touch with him and his family, but Leach has his own protocol. And so it's kind of difficult to really get to a student athlete. But anyway, will Luke come back? He certainly would go out in a huge style. And a lot of people, there's two sides to the coin. There's people who are saying he'll take it. There's only so many quarterbacks right now that are in the country that are his level. So there's about 4 of them. So he has a very good chance for a high draft pick if he goes out early. What about the greed factor? What about the money factor? What about that? Is it greed? Is it money? Is it the love of money is the root of all evil? What about that? What about not finishing up your degree and getting your degree when you're 40 years old? I mean, how hard is that? How many people quit high school or go to college for a year and decide, you know what, I'm just going to work for a few years and go back, and they never go back. And they regret it when they're 35. I've seen so many people quit college and they say, I'll just take a year off. Well, they've got bills to pay. They've got an apartment rent. And on top of that, to go back to school and to maintain their lifestyle and their bills or their liability, it's very difficult. It's easier to get it done. Get her done. And finish up, get your 4-year degree. You'll always have your diploma. Nobody can take it away from you. There's the flip side saying, you know what, he's going to be earning tens of millions of dollars, and he can always get that degree later. But I tell you something, like I said, when you start a project in life, it's best to finish it. And if I was Luke, depending on my heart, I would probably go back to my junior year. A lot of people are saying he's already proved himself. He's already done great things. And we'll talk about the bowl picture, where we're going, what our choices are. But that said, a lot of people think Luke will not be back in 2017. I think he should be back. I'm not in denial. I'm not in resistance stage. I literally think he should be back and take us to another great year. We are losing Gabe Marks. We're going to lose some good receivers. We're losing a few people as well. But I'll tell you, we're just going to reload. Okay, we're going to reload. So, we don't want to get derailed here with the team if Luke's going to stay or not. His parents did groom him. They had a little bit of hiccup in it. We're going to talk about that after the break. We're going to talk about Brandon Darwin. It's Brandon Dawkins. I'm sorry, Brandon Dawkins, the quarterback for Arizona. Our next opponent coming up, we are going to talk about Brandon Dawkins. The Cougs 6-2 overall, 5-0 in conference, undefeated with Washington. And I just heard today if Washington and Washington State are going to win next Saturday. Okay, if the Huskies beat California and the Cougs beat the Wildcats, one of those teams are going to be playing in the Pac-12 championship in Santa Clara. Okay, one of the two. So if they both do their job, it's going to be Apple Cup's been around for 116 years. All right. Frankly, there's been a lot of good Apple Cups, but this one has to top them all. If the Cougs continue to do their job and the Huskies continue to win, this could be the biggest Apple Cup in the history of 116 years. We're going to talk about Luke Falk and Kristen Oaks High School and the amazing relationship that he has with the Arizona quarterback, Brandon Dawkins. What an amazing story. You're going to want to hear this. Coming up after the break, right after this.
Hey, Coug fans. You're podcasting with your host, James Laurie, and the PodcastCoug Radio Network. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougar football and Washington State, helping you get through each week. Hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, Google Play, Stitcher, or of course at PodcastCoug.com.
You are listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network. I'm James Laurie, your host on this weekly audio on demand, program on demand podcast. And you can find me at podcastcoug.com on iOS, Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, you name it. I'm going to be there all over the place. And feel free to subscribe or tell your friends. And this is a weekly, weekly all things Coug football audio podcast to get you through that Sunday through Saturday, get you through the week of all the information you're taking in. And this is just another kind of a nice entertainment just to bring you. And, you know, you can be, exercising, walking the dog, folding clothes, going to the gym, anything in the radio, the car radio. You can take a podcast anywhere with you on your phone and listen to it anytime, really. That's what it is, on demand. Great stuff, great things about Coug football. We are, so the top, 25 came out today. And we're number 25. Huskies are 5, and so here we are, right? And, it's all about winning. If we hadn't lost the first 2 games, I think we would be up there. Utah is like 16, and USC is there as well. So we've got, it's one game at a time. I love the focus that Luke has on the team. They just need to show up right in the beginning. How about a boat race, right? Why not? Let's put Arizona away and not just assume we're just going to put them away, but we need a boat race, right? We do. We're due for one. Okay, here we are. It got a great story. This is really cool. This story is about Luke Falk. You know about Luke on the history of how he walked on at Washington State. So we're going to take it back a couple of years. As he was in Logan, Utah, his parents, and I've met his mom. We met his mom at the FOB, the Football Operations Building, a couple of years ago. Annalisa, I think it's Annalisa, standing in front of his locker, and we met her and took a photo with her. Parents are really dialed in. They knew early on when Luke was young that he had the talent. They knew, you just know, right? I mean, I remember I used to work with Tim Lincecum's mom. Tim Lincecum, 3-time Cy Young Award winner, baseball, San Diego Giants, and Tim was in high school, and his mom would bring in a shoebox full of offers from every university, every major D1 school. And, when she told me that her and her husband bought a $3,500 pitching machine, my eyes opened up. Now, that was like in 1999. And when you spend $3,500 on your kid for a pitching machine, I just couldn't get it. I thought they were way overboard. So I had to go see it for myself. So I went to Liberty High School and watched Timmy Lincecum pitch a game. And there were scouts there when he was in high school. There were people clocking him at 80, 90 miles an hour. Maybe not 100, but it was 90. And so I thought, okay, this guy's, I get it. I get it. Parents early on, when your kid has a talent that's exceptional, you're going to do everything you can to help and assist and facilitate your child so they can go to the next level and get a great foundation. And that's what the Fox did, is they knew Luke had a talent early on. Of course, the two daughters are great singers, and they aspire to be a great recording artist. But what they did is they were at Logan High School, and Christian Oaks High School in L.A. has the same reputation as Bellevue and Skyline High School in the Seattle area. Those are suburbs. If you know Bellevue and Skyline, you know that they've been football powerhouses for the past 20 years. And Christian Oaks in L.A. has a incredible reputation, especially for quarterbacks, at getting them to the D1 level. So, I understand how they got there. It's like, hey, Luke, you know what? We're going to put you on a path, and this is the way to go. So they literally uprooted their home in Logan, his job, and I think he's self-employed, and he took his business and his job and home, and they relocated down to L.A., and Luke shows up at Oak Christian High School and becomes a starter. And obviously, and the second game, they played Bellevue High School. Bellevue, the Wolverines, and they literally got annihilated. I mean, they got blown out. And the head coach he benched Luke, and in comes Brandon Dawkins, this other highly regarded kid, same DNA as Luke, with the same aspirations, talent, everything. So Brandon Dawkins replaces Luke. Luke gets benched because they got boat raced by Bellevue, our Bellevue, right? And so after that, Luke says, "I didn't sign up for this. I'm not going to be a backup quarterback. I'm better than this." And they move back to Logan. And in that transition, they're losing a year. By the way, let me back up a little bit. During the Christian Oaks year, Luke did receive a offer from Florida State. Yeah, the Seminoles were interested in him, and when he got benched, Florida State they backed out. Okay, so the family moves back to Logan, and it takes a year. And Luke's off the radar. There's nobody looking at him. There isn't a coach at D1 or any level that really were he just got lost in that deal there. And so this is how that happened. And he had so obviously with Mike Leach and his reputation and the Cougs, and we're a throwing school, Leach decided to go to Washington State. It would be a perfect fit, and he walked on. And we obviously were very lucky. I mean, he could have gone anywhere. He could offers anywhere, but because of that setback, and I always say a setback is a setup. Okay, always remember that. A setback is a setup. Anytime you go through setbacks in life, many times you will come out of it going, I'm so glad that door closed 6 months ago, because it closed, but look what else opened in the future. So we're so blessed, obviously, to have Luke on it, obviously. But the Brandon Dawkins, that quarterback that was, that Luke got, that replaced Luke, right? Luke got benched, and in comes Brandon Dawkins. Well, that quarterback is now the starting quarterback for the Arizona Wildcats. And guess who's coming to town on Saturday at 1:00? That's right. It's gonna be Luke against Brandon, unbelievable. Isn't that an interesting story? I mean, that is just absolutely amazing. And we know what Arizona has been through this year. They've had injuries, and they have not, I think they have not even beat a Pac-12 team. They're 2-5. So 2-6. So, it just shows you what you are on paper is one thing, but anyway, they're in a rebuilding the program. Rich Rod, rebuilding with Brandon Dawkins and the entire team. 1:00 kick afternoon. Like I said, Gabe loves this afternoon. It's going to be a great change. Getting dark now at 4:30. Anyway, that's kind of the story there, and I thought that was fascinating. So here we are, week 9, and that's it. Now, Arizona, then right around the corner is, of course, California. They're coming to. That's another home game. They are very strong on offense, but they don't have a defense, and they're playing the Huskies on Saturday. So. I don't consider that a trap game at all for the Huskies. That should not be a trap game. So there we go. We got Arizona, and that's all we're going to talk about this week. Next week, Wednesday or Thursday, we'll be back with episode number 2 with the PodcastCoug. So glad that you joined us here today. And again, if you like it, if you like us, you can find us anywhere. But remember, you can always subscribe, and it will come to you. Thanks again for checking us out and listening, and we'll talk to you next week. God bless.
You've been listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the PodcastCoug Radio Network. Find us at PodcastCoug.com.